Good afternoon and welcome to Walton Hall, Milton Keynes, the home of the Open University. You're here for OpenMinds Live, the event that aims to bring your alumni magazine to life. My name is Karen Hart. I am the Deputy Director of Development, and for the next hour and a quarter I'll be guiding you through our session today. Today we have not just an online audience, but also an audience here in the theatre. This is a hybrid event. There are probably as many of you at home as there are in the theatre. So welcome to everyone. Wherever you are joining us from, we could not be more pleased that you've chosen to spend the next hour and a half with us. And we really do have a jam-packed session. So as I say, the event has been designed to bring your OpenMinds magazine to life. OpenMinds hopefully landed on your doorsteps in February and highlights news and research from across the university. And today you're going to hear not just from people featured in the pages of that magazine, but also from a special guest speaker that we have for you, Kate Moss, the author. So today we're going to also hear from OU alumnus Andrew Newland, who's going to share some of his journey with us, from OU student to award-winning chocolatier. We're going to hear about scholarships and bursaries and how they're changing lives. And as I say, finally, I will ask onto the stage author, ambassador for the Carers Scholarships, Kate Moss. She's going to share some of her journey as a carer with us. Now, unfortunately, we have got a last-minute change to the agenda today. We were hoping to be welcoming Dr. Craig Walker, to share more about decolonising education for peace in Africa. Unfortunately, Craig's not very well and can't join us today, but we really hope to be able to bring you that session in the future. Instead, though, what it does give us the opportunity to do is share more of the student stories with you so that you can learn more about some of our alumni, your fellow alumni. And throughout today's event, if you're online, you will be able to submit questions and comments through the chat so that we can put those to the panel at the end of the session. For those of you in the auditorium, there will be a chance to ask questions too. And when that time comes, if you are selected, I would ask you to wait for the mic to come round so that everyone can hear your question. But before we start with our speakers today, I wanted to share a short film with you. We often in sessions like this try and share something perhaps that you're not so familiar with, maybe something that you don't necessarily associate with the Open University. And today I want to share a short film which I think really shines a light on one of the OU's best kept secrets, our postgraduate research.
Been an absolute rocket ride.
It seems like no one really knows there's PhD students here.
I personally wouldn't want to study anywhere else. It's a combination of environment, it's a combination of the resources that the OU offers.
It's a really, really lovely research community to be in.
Everything is sort of seen as an advantage, life experience, rather than something that holds you back.
Students that are coming in, not necessarily from academia, but from the professional world.
It means that the richness and the diversity of the research that comes out of the OU is much more three-dimensional, is much more authentic.
And also I'm inspired to get to that level where I can be able to give back to the society.
It's been really wonderful to work in an environment where interdisciplinary work is the norm, it's welcomed.
When I first came here, my supervisor said, you will be writing papers, you will be submitting to conferences, you will be travelling the world.
I was a little bit worried because I'm a disabled student. The main thing that struck me at the OU was the attitude, the culture. If you're finding something difficult in terms of a physical barrier or anything else, they go, right, what can we do?
One One of the amazing opportunities that I've had was to be involved in a BBC OU co-production. One of my main duties was helping to produce the posters. So at the end of the Earth from Space series, when they said, contact the OU to get your free poster, and one of my photos is on there, and that was an amazing experience.
It's at the forefront of technology. We have researchers working on science that goes into NASA and European Space Agency missions. And that means that all research here is world class, and I get to be involved in that.
I connected with the ethos of the OU. I also have a family as well, so I think just having that flexibility of having taken maternity leave 2 times, actually, they were very supportive of that.
So one of the reasons why I decided to come to the Open University was world-class lab facilities that we've got, and the people running those labs are really allowing me to do research that nobody else is doing. And the fact that you've only got graduate students as well as the lecturers and the experts means it feels much more like a research institute.
My experience so far has been liberating, intellectually stimulating, just wonderful, really, and life-changing. Definitely life-changing.
So perhaps something there that you don't necessarily naturally associate the Open University with. So we're going to move to our first set of speakers, and just to remind you, if you are online, we've got colleagues, Emily and Sophie, are looking at your questions. So as we go through this morning, do please comment and pass your questions through that way. But I am going to now introduce our first speaker, and many of you may recognise him as the cover star of OpenMinds magazine. Andrew Newlands is an OU psychology graduate. But interestingly, he's also the founder and managing director of award-winning chocolatier Monty Bojangles. So he's always very popular. And he's going to talk us through his journey from OU graduate to managing director, businessman, and founder of Monty Bojangles. Andrew.
Thank you so much. What an introduction. I have an agenda today. My agenda is to say thank you to the Open University. That is the theme of my talk. But I'm going to get started with an intro. So I am Andrew Newlands. I'm the founder and managing director of the Monty Bojangles company. Hopefully some of you know the brand, I hope. You'll find our products in a range of multiple retailers, in Waitrose, in Sainsbury's, in Tesco, to name but a few. We also sell to a wide range of different specialty retailers, fine food establishments, and we export to approximately 15 international territories. But a little bit more about the brand later, because I'm here to celebrate the impact that the Open University had on my life. I studied psychology, as was indicated with the intro. I started in 2005, which is almost 20 years ago, which was the same year that I started the business. And candidly, my motivation was to risk manage, which is rather dull, right? But a degree with the OU was the first step in my plan B, as it were. You see, because business, as many of you will no doubt know, is a fairly perilous venture to enter into, and I was incredibly young at the time. I had no idea what was going to happen. So I needed to make sure that if it all went wrong, that there was something else going on in my life, right? I also didn't complete formal education. I left school after GCSEs and decided to go my own path and start sole trading, which meant that I never scratched the itch of enjoying higher education and being stimulated in that way. And finally, if I'm honest, psychology is such a deliriously enjoyable subject to engage within. I found that it equipped me with a veritable toolbox of different skills, and actually it radically changed my perspective on business, actually, and on life in general. But I'm going to get to that. Returning to the brand, It's worth, let me see, in excess of 20 million at retail presently. We've won multiple Great Taste Awards, which are awards given to, obviously, delicious things, yes. We've also won many design awards, and being a designer, I'm incredibly proud of that fact. And I suppose our greatest accolades were 2 awards for enterprise, given from 2 separate monarchs, which is really, really wonderful, frankly. And they hang in a position of pride in the office. But, you know, I recently gave a talk to a group of young children at my first school, Cumnor House in Croydon. Wonderful school. And to make the topic interesting, I set them a task of guessing how many truffles the Monty Bojangles company produces in 1 year, right? But rather than just asking them to state a number, which would be rather bland, I decided to use exotic units of measure. Okay, so I'm going to share one with you today just to give you an idea of scale. Imagine, if you will, a tower of Eiffel Towers, stacked one on top of the other, reaching up into the sky, yes? Precisely how many Eiffel Towers would one need to stack, one on top of the other, for that tower to be of the equivalent height of a tower of truffles? A truffle is approximately this large, yes? That we manufacture in 1 year. So that's what I asked the kids. Picture a tower of truffles, defying physics, reaching up into the clouds. How many Eiffel Towers would you need to stack to reach that same height? These kids were, what, like 10? You can only imagine how much fun we had that day. All structure evaporated. None of them guessed the right answer, and indeed the final number staggered me, because it transpires that we're just a few Eiffel Towers shy of 3,500, which is 130 Mount Everests. And if you were so inclined, you could create a path of truffles, laying one after the other, all of them touching, from our head office in South Croydon, Kenley, and it would reach all the way to Venice, Italy, which, well, you could do that if you wish. But the point is, I suppose, it's a far more interesting way of explaining scale, is it not? Now, I started by saying that I wanted to thank the Open University. The way I'm going to do that is I am going to share with you 3 Monty Bojangles methodologies, okay? These are philosophies or mindsets which I developed in my early years from 2005 onwards, where I had this parallel life, this alternative life, this academic life inspired and infused by the love of psychology. These methodologies I use to this day, and I honestly believe that they've been heavily inspired by that very critical time in my life. Now, before I get into them, I need to debunk a fact, right, which is one of the most important things I like to achieve when I talk, right? I am an entirely ordinary person, okay? I am not a genius. I am not a superhero. I do not travel in time and space, okay? I'm very, very ordinary. And my 3 methodologies are very ordinary. So I'm so sorry to report that what you're not getting today are magic spells or tricks or traps or turnkey methods to overcome adversity. They're not. They're really, really ordinary. And I believe that you should promote and encourage ordinariness. I would never want to give the impression that I was more than I actually am. And I want to inspire people to realize that it is possible to do remarkable things, to achieve tremendous success, or indeed have an opportunity to do so and be ordinary, yeah? Quite candidly, if I can do it, anyone can. That's the core energy. And you'll see what I mean as I go through them. So we're going to get started, all right? My first methodology. Monty Bojangles methodology number 1, never say no, okay? Sounds very much like a belief that might get you into a lot of trouble. But in my experience, particularly in the early years, never saying no served me tremendously well. You see, I didn't produce or create the Monty Bojangles brand until many years in, whatever it was, 3 or 4 years, I forget. In the early days, I was creating products and designing for other brands. And I would have conversations with businesses who were looking for me to help them generate ideas. And virtually every single one of them was borderline unreasonable, if I'm honest with you. The expectations were very high, the timeframes were very short, and not for 1 second did I give any indication other than total confidence in what I was about to deliver. Never, ever say no, always say yes. Can you give me 10 concepts by 10 a.m. tomorrow? Yes, okay? Sounds ridiculous, right? But that's literally how the conversation went. I was determined to make sure that I delivered solutions for these people, that I was the one that made them fulfill their goals. I wanted to become totally indispensable. Now, I shall not pretend that when I put down the phone, I didn't have a little wobble, because, you know, It's hard, right? But you know, I had a sense of self-belief which came from three distinct directions, and this is where I tie it into the OU, okay? I shan't pretend for a second that I didn't have a certain innate self-confidence in design and creativity. I got myself into this mess in the first place, right? So I obviously had something to offer. But beyond that, I cannot emphasize enough the profound galvanization of my self-worth that came from having this parallel life with the OU, okay? I just don't think it's possible not to feel good about yourself if you can balance at the same time as a business life with recruitment and investment and all that other good stuff, not to mention being creative and working hard to deadlines, an academic life with the OU, yeah, and creating a brand and raising a family and having friends and a social life and all that other good stuff. Now, I achieved all these things, and I did that not because I'm remarkable, as I said at the beginning, or because I'm spectacular and sensational. I was able to do it because the OU made it so easy for me. It was so accessible and it was so achievable to systematically, in little bite-sized chunks, achieve success. And every single time I deployed an essay that I was proud of, or I finished a module, I felt great about myself, and it really added to my self-esteem. And it made me feel like I could do anything. And the second most valuable benefit of an OU degree through that critical time in my career was when I was confronted with a creative block, which definitely happened. I had a glorious sanctuary that I could retreat to. I'm sure many of you know what I mean. There is something so delicious and wonderful getting into the best chair in the house and opening a book and just escaping, and I loved it. I knew that my creative mind was off there. I'd throw it into my unconscious, get on with it, you know, just let the guy cook, because I'm going to go over here and I'm going to start reading about something completely different. I am going to provoke different thoughts and different neurons. And I knew that after an hour, or however long it took, when I came back, I'd be ready. I would have fixed the problem. And you know what? I did fix the problem. And actually that experience and that formula very much taught me to be confident in myself. So thank you, OU, for giving me that self-belief. Number two, Monty Bojangles' methodology. Number two, over-deliver. The reality here, I'm sorry about the donuts, yeah. Everyone hungry? Look at them, don't they look amazing? Jeez. The things you can do with chocolate. But anyway, the over-deliver, I do not believe in compromise. I think it's absolutely essential to never compromise. I've been told time and time again, particularly in the early years, that I needed to manage my time, I needed to not exceed what was being billed. I didn't care. I've got to be honest with you, it was probably self-harming, but I didn't care because I needed to make sure that the work that I did was my best work. Yes, I would never, ever, ever want to stand in front of someone and show them something that I stopped working on before I was happy. It makes no sense. And that sense of compromise permeates through my entire career. You'll find it in the brand. There is no compromise in Monty Bojangles. No compromise on taste, no compromise on design, on quality, on provenance, no compromise at all on price. Every single one of these things is over-delivering, yes? And frankly, there is a sort of pragmatist which contributes to that premise. One which is in favour of investment in the future at the cost of the present. Yes, I was investing in a reputation of never compromising, which really does precede you. When you go into a room, your reputation is there first. And if everyone knows that here's someone who doesn't compromise, who will always deliver something exceptional, my word, don't you want to be in a position where people are delighted when they anticipate delight? I mean, that's exciting, isn't it? And that's precisely the sort of energy that I wanted to promote and provoke. This is relevant to the Open University because ultimately it's that same instinct of investment that led me to have that second life, that had me open that chapter, and through those critical 7 years of my early business life, invest in a plan B. But it's the best form of investment because every single page that I turned equipped me with things that I could use immediately. I was able to utilize that investment and the dividends that it delivered every single day. Best investment ever, right? I didn't have to wait for 5 years or 10 years before I could get my teeth into it. Every single day. This is a psychology thing, but it's also a method of how the OU works for me. So thank you to the Open University for proving the value of over-delivering. And my third and final, be curious. These are our cat tins, and they're absolutely beautiful. The curiosity, I don't think we need to work too hard drawing a line between a curious mind and study at the OU, do we? Because actually I feel like the mechanics of a academic path through the OU actually provokes curiosity. I certainly believe it did for me, because when I was in the mindset derived from making the choice about what I would study, where I would study it, how I would do it, the time frame, the zone, the music, the ambience, everything, it was my choice. I was receptive, my mind was open, and I was curious. The actual experience was hunger, yeah? By the time I opened my book, I was hungry. And I believe if I had gone into a more typical path and followed a more conventional method of acquiring a degree, which frankly would have been impossible as well as running a business, I don't think I would have been hungry. I would have gone into those lectures and I would have maybe been peckish, but not the sort of hunger that I experienced whenever I opened an OU book. I was ready to indulge in something that truly fascinated me. And at that level of tenacity, I suppose, really started, and curiosity really started to permeate into my business life. Because actually it became instinctive to not only get into that open mindset, but to continue to ask questions around it. My favourite part of psychology was certainly discursive psychology and semiotics, incidentally, both of which are entirely valuable in the design world. And I just indulged. You know, it fascinated me, so I continued to dig, and I learnt more and more and more. And to this day, I am a student of these two subsections of psychology. And that same hunger became instinctive and natural for me, and I used it in my business world. I asked questions of everyone around me, because believe me, the world is full of people that know more than I do. I meet them every day. I'm in a room of people that know more than me, right? How do we do better? Is we ask questions, we take an interest. Also, show respect to people around you, recognizing that they have done it and they've done it in their own way and they have a story to tell. And I took that curiosity innate of a career with the Open University, those 7 years, which reinforced time and time again the value of taking that mindset and that approach into the real world. And it helped. It helped because, candidly, I was able to increase the services that I provided. And I would have never dreamed of launching a brand without learning how to do it first, without asking people who had done it. I know it sounds like a very simple thing to join the dots to, but I don't believe that I think that the Open University and my time with them really encouraged that curiosity, really advocated it. It became a very positive feedback loop, because every time I did it, I was rewarded, yeah? And the most important thing about being curious, naturally, is it washes away fear, yeah? When you don't know something, what your mind contributes to the idea of it is far worse, always far worse than the reality. And that's true of brands, that's true of manufacturing, that's true of design. Yeah, you're far more liberated without fear and without worry and with total self-belief. So that's my third Monty Bojangles methodology, be curious. And that's literally the end of everything I have to say, apart from to wrap up and explain once again, as I started, that I'm here not to promote Monty Bojangles' brand, actually really genuinely not. I'm here to say thank you. I adore this place. I've loved coming back. And I am absolutely certain that those 7 years completely transformed my mind and encouraged me to be successful and enabled me to stand in front of you guys today and declare that never saying no, over-delivering and being curious, which came from the hot pot of opportunity that the Open University represented for me back in 2005. I've got them to thank for that. And I'm sure at some point in the future I'll be dialing in, picking a new topic and indulging once again. So that's me. Thank you very much.
Andrew, thank you so much. What an advert for the Open University, as indeed all of you are. And for those of you who are still curious, I feel that I really must mention OpenLearn, which is the home of the Open University's free learning resources. So if you get home tonight and you're feeling curious, Google OpenLearn and see what your next learning journey might look like. Thank you so much, Andrew, for coming and sharing your time with us. And do start thinking about any questions that you may have for Andrew, either in the room or at home online. Now, some of you may remember in your OpenMinds magazine reading a story about another one of our amazing alumni. Genuine Mwasha has kindly recorded a video for us so that he can share his story in his own words. He had a tiny little piece in OpenMinds. We were so keen to share his journey. And I'm really delighted that I can now share Genuine's story in his own words. An incredible story from Genuine, but I just want to also say that each and every one of our alumni is special. You have all been through quite an experience to get your degree. Some of you over 6 years, some of you over more. So every single one of you is a fantastic advocate and ambassador for the Open University, but I do want to say a particular thank you to Genuine for sharing his story. And we're going to hear more stories about our students and our alumni as we move into this next section. Some of you may have met Mr. Parsons before, Mark Parsons. He is the head of alumni fundraising here at the Open University, and he's going to talk about the Open Futures Fund, which was also covered in OpenMinds, and tell you a little bit more about how it is changing lives. Mark.
Thank you, Karen. Good afternoon, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you today. As Karen said, my name's Mark Parsons and I'm Head of Alumni Fundraising here at the Open University. I'm going to talk today a little bit about the Open Futures Fund, our scholarships programme, and I have to be completely honest with you, I've been really looking forward to this event because there are some incredible student stories to share with you, which are stories of triumph, inspiration and overcoming adversity. But before I share those stories and a little bit about the Open Futures Fund, I think the most important thing I want to say today is thank you to all of you. I know so many of you have supported the Open Futures Fund since its launch, and everything you're going to see today wouldn't have been possible without your support. So thank you to all of you for everything that you do for your university and our students. So I thought what I'd do first of all is just give a quick history of how the Open Futures Fund came into being. So in 2015, the university launched its first 5-year fundraising campaign called Open Up the Future, and I'm sure many of you will remember that. And that had an aim of raising £50 million in philanthropic income to support the university's students, research and educational programmes. And just in case you're wondering, I'm pleased to say we did hit that £50 million target, and that was thanks to you. And from that, one of the legacies of that campaign was scholarships. And scholarships are really at the heart of what we do here at the Open University, which is keeping education open to all. And we have one objective with them really, which is to transform lives and rewrite futures. And they've most definitely been doing that over the last 6 years. So I just want to talk a little bit about the programmes that sit under the Open Futures Fund, and there's really 5 key scholarship programmes. The first one to launch was the Disabled Veterans Scholarship Fund in 2018, and that programme is providing education to disabled veterans who are injured in or due to their military service, and its aim is to really help them to rebuild their lives. And then in 2019, we launched the Carers Scholarship Fund. And in 2019, as I'm sure many of you will remember, was the OU's 50th anniversary. And many of you supported that fund and also took that opportunity to get a shield on the Tree of Learning, which sits in the Open University Library. And again, the reason for the Carers Scholarship Fund, we felt it was really important to introduce this programme that allowed unpaid carers the opportunity to build identities outside of their caring responsibilities, but also train or retrain to acquire new skills, new knowledge, to have new careers at some point. Then in 2022, we introduced a further 2 programmes, the first being Sanctuary Scholarships, which was providing free education to people displaced from their homeland and escaping conflict and war. And then also we introduced the Black Student Support Fund, which is providing scholarships for Black students from disadvantaged backgrounds, helping to improve the representation of Black students at the Open University. And then the final one that was introduced in 2023 was the Care Experience Scholarship. And that's providing scholarships to young people aged 25 and under who have been in the care system. So since the launch in 2018, I'm delighted to say that 569 scholarships have been provided. That's 569 lives that have been changed. The people being given the opportunities to have futures full of hope, and futures full of inspiration. And it's not just for them. We see that these scholarships don't only benefit the students, it benefits their families, their communities. They really are widespread in what they can do and the impact that they have. And one of the things that always amazes me about these scholarship programs is the demand for them. Every year the demand seems to grow, and some of these scholarship programs actually for every place available have at least 10 people trying to apply for them. There's people who are desperately wanting to change their lives through an open university education, and I hope that really just shows the value that they bring for people who are fortunate enough to be able to access these scholarships. As I promised, I wanted to share some really inspiring stories. And the first one that I want to share with you is a gentleman called Stephen Wilson. And he's now a graduate from the Disabled Veterans Scholarship Fund programme. And that's one of the fantastic things now that we're 6 years into the scholarship programmes, is we are seeing people graduate and hearing how it's changing their lives. And I won't give away too much about Stephen's story because it's incredible and he articulates it far better than I ever could. So here's Stephen's story. quite an incredible story there from Stephen, how he's gone from being in the military to a disabled veteran homeless, and then on to being an OU graduate and playing such an important role in his community. I think it's not only his mum who is proud of him, I think everyone here at the Open University is incredibly proud of what Stephen's achieved. I just wanted to touch on the Care Experience Scholarship, and we covered this in the OpenMinds magazine in February. And I just wanted to talk about why we've introduced the Care Experience Scholarship as part of the Open Futures Fund. So it was launched in 2023 in collaboration with John Lewis Partnership, and their Building Happier Futures programme. And I just wanted to share some of the stats that I think really bring to life the importance of this scholarship programme. So there's 108,000 young people in the UK care system, and only 14% of care leavers go to university, compared to 47% of young people who didn't grow up in care. And probably the most startling statistic is that if you are a young person who's been in care, you are more likely to be homeless than go to university. So we felt that this scholarship fund was incredibly important, and we launched it in OpenMinds. And we know that these young people, they have so much potential and ambition, and it just needs to be harnessed and unlocked. And we're just trying to play our small part in helping to make this happen. And some of you who read about the Care Experience Scholarship programme in OpenMinds might have read Sophie's story. Sophie had an incredibly powerful story about how she's been in the care system from a very young age, but how she's now wanting to transform her life and be a child psychologist and help other children who have been in difficult situations. And I just wanted to share two quotes that Sophie told us. The first one is about education. She said, "I realised that for the majority of my life I'd been in survival mode, and now I had to learn how to live a normal life. Throughout this time, I realised how important my education was for my future." And she had a message for donors, which was, "Thank you for making this possible. This is truly a life-changing scholarship. It has opened doors for me that I thought would never get the chance to open. I'm sure so many people are in a similar situations, and having a scholarship fund like this in place makes dreams come true." And John Lewis, as part of this campaign, offered to match fund the first £25,000 of donations that were received to the Care Experience Scholarship Fund. And I'm delighted to say, as ever, the OU family were incredibly kind and generous and supported this. And today we've raised over £56,000 through that OpenMinds appeal. So thank you to everybody who made a donation to that appeal. It's making an incredible difference to people like Sophie. And then I just wanted to share one more story with you, which is the story of Rebecca. And Rebecca is a student on the Carers Scholarship Fund. And as I mentioned earlier, the Carers Scholarship Fund is for unpaid carers, and it's designed to help them build identities outside of caring for their loved ones. Many carers have to give up careers, and it's an opportunity for them to train or retrain to prepare for possibly life after being a carer and having a new career. And Rebecca, like Stephen, has got an incredible story, and hopefully what comes out of her sharing her story is Rebecca's unbelievable excitement for her future.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I became a carer when I was 22 and I had my first child. Since then, my confidence had taken a real knock. I didn't feel like I knew who I was anymore, but I did know that I wanted to try and gain an undergraduate degree. When I discovered the Open University and saw that the model was designed to be really flexible from anywhere in the world, I knew that I could make that work. I didn't think I would be able to gain a degree having become a carer when I had my first son, and he has multiple diagnoses that require quite a high level of care. Being a carer has had a huge impact on my education. I had to give up my place to study as an undergraduate back when I was 22 and I had my son. So to find the opportunity with the Open University to continue my education and go on to hopefully secure my undergraduate degree, which will then in theory lead on to my chosen career, has been a real revelation. I thought that my chance had gone, but the OU has shown me that that chance has never gone. I found out about the Carer Scholarship Fund when I was looking at the options available to me as a carer in terms of their national support that was out there for people who were students but also had caring responsibilities. The only place I found anything was on the Open University website, and I was able to discover a fund that was specifically tailored for exactly my demographic, and I had never seen anything so targeted before. And it was incredibly affirming to see that the OU had recognised that there's this big group of people who are a pool of talent with lots of transferable skills who haven't had the opportunity to translate those skills into academic qualifications. The unique nature of the way that you can commence your study with the Open University is the sole reason why I decided to go for it and undertake a law degree. The lack of formal entry requirements meant that it didn't feel daunting. It felt really accessible and welcoming to just dip your toe in the water and give it a go. As a carer, you never know when that crisis is going to happen, so you have to be able to adapt and have a really flexible attitude. And the model of the OU means that I can study from anywhere, anytime. I can use the app on my phone, or I can download even my textbook materials to my laptop. So that means that I am able to dip in and out of my study as and when my other responsibilities allow. The scholarship has meant to me a massive change in direction for my life. I thought my chance to secure an undergraduate degree had gone, and I had lost a huge amount of confidence in myself. So securing the funding for the degree has done two things. It's given me a massive confidence boost, but it's also taken away the huge fear and worry that comes with securing funding for a degree. And it's taken the pressure off my shoulders so that I can really throw myself into my studies and enjoy the process. One of the most memorable and enjoyable parts of my journey so far with the OU has been showing myself that I can achieve. I've been able to score really highly in all of my assessments so far, and that has been really confidence boosting. My plans for when I graduate from the Open University are to aim high and see where I land. I would love to move through to the bar practice course when my degree is finished, and then go on to secure pupillage and become a barrister. The difference that having my OU qualification will make to my life is huge. Without it, I won't be able to go on to practice law. It's been the beginning of a really exciting journey for me, one that I didn't think I would ever be able to make come true. Without it, I also think that I would have stayed in a place where I lacked confidence and I lacked ambition, and I didn't have any excitement for my future. But now I feel like the world truly is my oyster again. A message that I would give to donors supporting the Carer Scholarship Fund is to say, don't underestimate the impact that your support has. It's really easy to say that something has changed a life, but for me, that is exactly what the Carer Scholarship Fund has done.
So I hope you enjoyed seeing Rebecca's story, and we really can't wait to see what Rebecca achieves going forward. I started this presentation by saying thank you, and that's the way I want to finish. Everything that you've seen today, as I said, none of that would be possible without your incredible support. You really are helping our students to transform their lives and rewrite their futures. So thank you for everything that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for that and for sharing those incredible stories. I hope it makes you proud of your university all over again. And what I hope it also does is shows how true we are to our founding mission, which is to be open to people, to places, methods and ideas. And actually, this next segue from Rebecca, who is one of our carers and on a carer scholarship, is for me to introduce our next speaker, who is Kate Moss, CBE. And Kate is here in part because she's an ambassador for our carer scholarships. You may know her as an author, performer, essayist, playwright and campaigner, and I'm sure that many of you are familiar with her best-selling books, including Labyrinth, Citadel and The Burning Chambers. She is the founder-director of the Women's Prize for Fiction and the Women's Prize for Non-Fiction, and I'm delighted to introduce you to her today so that she can share her journey as a carer, which she talked about in her memoir, An Extra Pair of Hands. Kate.
Well, hello to everybody who's watching online and to the people in the room who've already heard from me. So you know that I am a writer and how I became a writer. You know that I also do plays, that I perform, I do all sorts of other things. But what many people don't know is that I'm a full-time carer as well. And I am very careful about writing my own story and putting that on the page. You know, I make stuff up. That's what I do. But I was approached by the Wellcome Trust, and they had a series of books that they wanted to put out there that were written by non-experts in the field. And what they meant by that is that they wanted books about social work, about being a psychologist, about being a doctor, that was not written by the people who were writing academic texts, although those things are very, very important. And they also particularly wanted one on care. And they approached me because they knew that I was a full-time carer and I'd not really written about it or talked very much about it. But the thing that made me say yes, even though I had reservations, was this. They said, because you don't look like a carer. And I said, that is because you don't know any carers. Because we are everywhere, hidden in plain sight, in the room here and those of you watching at home and online. A woman will have a 50-50 chance of being a carer by the time she is 59. And a man will have a 50-50 chance of being a carer by the age of 75, which suggests that women care for everybody, and quite often husbands and partners care for their partners. But there are, when I was writing the book, An Extra Pair of Hands, and I was writing it during lockdown, when I started, the official figure from Carers UK is that there are 8 million unpaid carers in the UK, of whom a significant, although small, number are children. And a child counts from anybody from the age of 5 to 16. And those young people have almost no education. And when they do go to school, they go worrying what they will find when they get home. And they are caring for mothers and for siblings and for aunts and for uncles and for everybody. And so the more I thought about it, I thought I need to write this and to tell my story of being a carer. Now, I became a carer at about that age, at about 58, 59, when I started to help my mother be a full-time carer for my father, who had Parkinson's. He had that experience that many of you who are carers will know, and some of you might know personally, which was that he was a wonderful, fit, fantastic, beautiful, elegant gentleman in his 80s who was living well with Parkinson's. But then something happened, because that is always the caring story. Something happens that triggers a different sort of life. And for him, it was being on a plane and catching a virus, and within hours of landing, he was in intensive care. And I was very, very close to my dad, and only my mother and I were allowed to see him. And my sisters were there being brilliant, but it was very limited in the intensive care unit. And we would go in and visit every day. And my father was a man of faith, and he was quite sure that there was another world to come, which was very peaceful and wonderful. And he talked very movingly later about walking to the end and seeing that this was the door he could go through, but then turning round and seeing my mother, and they had been married for 60 years, and thinking it wasn't quite right to leave her, and coming back. And I was with him in intensive care, and I was reading poems that I knew he'd loved as a boy from the Oxford Book of English Verse. And he hadn't spoken and he'd been very unconscious for a long period of time. And I was reading from the Battle of Lepanto, and suddenly a hand went out, and he put his hand on my arm, and he said, "Darling, I think that will do." At which point I knew he was coming back to us, but that began a moment of him needing full-time care. My mother didn't need full-time care. She needed to be cared for once my father had died. And they lived with us, and my mother-in-law, the legendary Granny Rosie, has lived with us for 25 years, and I am now her full-time carer and have been for the past 5 years. So I've been a carer, full-time carer, for 15 years on and off. Now, I am lucky. I'm lucky for many reasons. I'm lucky because I'm a writer, and I'm my own boss, which means that when I became a carer, I didn't have to give up my job. I still had the ability to do what I did and be myself. Listening to Rebecca's story, for many carers, they vanish into themselves. Most carers have to give up their work in order to be carers. If all of the unpaid carers were paid, it would be twice the budget of the NHS. So without unpaid carers, this country falls to pieces. But the challenges of being a carer, and you heard some of it in that beautiful film, are much more complicated than people often realise. So it's not just a matter of time, it's not just a matter of money. It's about the relationship and how you negotiate a relationship. So I loved my parents and I love my mother-in-law very, very dearly. But we have always been equal. So how do you begin to care for the people who cared for you? I'm lucky in another way, that I was given unconditional love. And my husband and I met when we were at school, when we were 15, and I have known my mother-in-law, therefore, most of my adult life, and I love her too. But many carers are caring for people they don't even know. The wife of their father's second marriage, for example, or a sibling who doesn't want to be cared for but needs somebody to care for them. So that can be very complicated when you're in a relationship where the person resents what you're doing. A very big issue that's come through all of these films today, and I must say I found it incredibly moving listening to the stories. As a non-alumni, I now feel I should be signing up for a course. I'd like to be part of this now in a different sort of way. But this is the reason that I said I'd love to be an ambassador for the Carer Scholarship, is that we know that education changes lives. We know that everybody wants the opportunity to make a contribution and to be themselves within the confines of their caring responsibilities. Every one of us who is a carer knows that you are only one phone call away from a catastrophe. I'm here today because my brother-in-law and my husband are at home with Granny Rosie. She is amazing. She is sharp as a tack. She will be very cross I'm not at home, because when I'm not there, she doesn't get a gin and tonic at 12 o'clock. The boys make her wait till 6, which I think is entirely wrong. She's nearly 94. She's in a wheelchair. She can't do any of those things for herself. She was a very independent, extraordinary woman, and she was a teacher, as was my mother. And my father was a lawyer. So it's interesting hearing these stories and what people want to do about giving back. But the thing about education and being a carer is that it will always be disrupted, because the person you are caring for has to come first. You never do anything when you're a full-time carer without having at the back of your mind, are they okay? Has X remembered to do Y? Has the person that's coming in to sit with the person you care for turned up? Many of my girlfriends, and of course male friends as well, have their phones on always now in meetings, because we've got to the age where they are thinking about caring for the older generation. Everybody lived with us, And people would often say, that's amazing that everybody lived with you and you have a multi-generational household. It is, but we're lucky, again, because we have the space, because we're writers, but also because it is oddly less tiring. Many of you in this room, many of you watching at home today, will spend most of your weekends driving halfway across the country. But with education, people who have to stop, dip in, dip out, will be able to get the qualifications that will help them live their best lives. It's what Rebecca said. And it can happen at any stage, someone starting a degree and not being able to finish it. But it shouldn't matter that you can't do it in the regulation 3 years or 4 years. And we heard, brilliant presentation earlier from Andrew about Monty Bojangles. I have a lot of boxes in my cupboard of those. But about taking that 7 years to do it. Education is about all of life, not just a couple of years of it. So with the Carers Fund, any of you who have been supporting it and any of you who might be thinking about it, and every one of these scholarship funds is so important, and we will all have areas that we are drawn to more than others, I suspect. But it's thinking about what we can do to change a life, because one life change changes 2, and 2 lives changes 4. And there are many young people, much younger than Rebecca, who will hit 16 and they will have not a single piece of paper. And we can all say that the bits of paper shouldn't matter, but we know that our self-esteem and the sense of achievement when you hold that diploma, that undergraduate degree, that BTEC, whatever it is, in your hand means everything. So when I was writing An Extra Pair of Hands, I had to decide how honest to be. No, not how honest, how much to share. Because as I say, I hide behind making things up for my day job. And what I had to do, my father had died, he died in 2011. My mother died in 2014, but Granny Rosie is still there. And so I wrote the story of my father's life and decline, and my mother's life and very quick exit, because having been a carer herself, the one thing she knew was that she did not want to decline, that she would leave as herself. And it was devastating that she did, because on the Thursday before she died, she was on stage with Granny Rosie in an entertainment group called the Old Timers, wearing a pair of fishnet stockings and kicking her legs in the air and singing Wine and Whiskey and Wild, Wild Women. And she felt ill on Saturday and died on Sunday. And I had to ring her friends up and say, I'm afraid Barbara's gone. And people said, they argued with me. They said, she can't have done. But the thing that you have to learn emotionally when you're a carer, and this is why, again, education is so important, is that idea of having a different safe space to be from the rest of your life, that sense of refuge, again, that Andrew talked about, that you could take yourself away from everything else and just restore yourself, is that the emotional process of being a carer to an older person in particular is always going to be, it's going to end in one way. It's not the same as looking after somebody who is ill and will get better. Old age, as the great French writer described it, is, a shipwreck. It's a gouffrage. And so you have to learn how to deal with that. And education is one way to help with the emotions that come with being a carer, because you know always the end of the story. And when I'm writing, I can manipulate the end of the story, but there are some stories that just are what they will be. Now, there are many wonderful books in this area, and we mentioned it a little bit earlier, but for the benefit of the people who have just joined us for online, when I did my Desert Island Discs earlier last year, and I explained that it was a very intense experience because you talk for 3 hours about things that are very personal and very painful sometimes. For me, being a carer is an act of love. It is an opportunity to give back to my father and to my mother, and still to my mother-in-law, Granny Rosie, all of the love that I had unconditionally all of my life. But many people, as we've heard, for the people who have the care experience, didn't have that. And it always comes back to the same thing. You can create new families. Education can be that family for everybody. And being a carer is a privilege. It's a privilege, but it's tough, and it is undermining, as Rebecca said. So with your help with the Carers Scholarships, we can make a difference to people who have so much to give, but have not been able to do it in quite the way that they'd hoped to do. And every single one of those people might be the person who is teaching your grandchild, or might be the person who leaps out in front of the bus and stops it in its tracks, because everybody has something to give. So carers, if you're watching and you're listening, and those of you in the audience, we're not alone. We need to speak more loudly on behalf of carers. It's the lowest of the statutory benefits, and many people rely on it. And what happens is, often when the loved person dies, that those people, those carers who've given sometimes 20 years, are left destitute. So we need all of us to raise our voices on behalf of unpaid carers and know that without them, without us, none of this works. So a great big salute to the Open University for having a Carers Scholarship. I'm really proud to be an ambassador, and I think I've made up a little bit the time that we were behind, and now we will be able to do our Q&A. Thank you very much.
Oh, goodness me, how on earth do you follow that? I was just sitting watching Kate talk and looking at some of these quotes around the book, and I felt all of these could apply to the talk that you've just given. So thank you so much for coming and sharing your very, very personal experience. And what we find actually is our carers scholarships are always oversubscribed. We always have more applicants than we have places, and the stories are heartbreaking and heart-lifting all at the same time. So we have now moved to Q&A, time for some questions and answers. We've got around 5 minutes left online, but I have a sense we may just run a tiny bit over, so do bear with me. And what I'd like to do first of all is see if there are any hands going up in the room. If anybody has any questions for our panel, for Kate, for Andrew and Mark. I can't believe if there's nothing in the room while you're... Oh, there's a lady down here. If you just wait for the roving mic to get to you, madam, and then everybody will be able to hear you both at home and in the room.
It's a very interesting talk, Kate, but I just have one comment. If you're looking after somebody who doesn't like you and doesn't respond, what do you do? It's your mother.
That actually, when I was writing the book, it came up time and time again. The awful truth is that people take responsibility, even if they are caring for someone who never cared for them. Because there is, well, we know, we won't get political about it, but we know that actually the importance of paid carers is that what about people without families? What about people who have lost a child? Or what about people who live on the other side of the world? Truthfully, unpaid carers always step up. And it's awful if you're caring for someone who doesn't want it. And the game changer, I would say, which is why I described Granny Rosie, my mother-in-law, as I did, it is very, very different caring for somebody with Alzheimer's, dementia, or some other neurological deficit, because they die twice, often. Yeah. So I mean, I only have admiration for people who manage to do that. That's why I said I'm lucky, because I'm caring for people that I love.
Thank you.
There was another question just here at the back of the first section. If we just go to this gentleman first. Claire's nearly with you, sir.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Andrew, where did the name Monty Bojangles come from? And is it an anagram?
Okay, it's an excellent question. Monty Bojangles was my cat, which is rather foolish, isn't it? But you know, there's a very short story behind it, which I'll share with you very briefly. I was driving a colleague of mine who still works for me, actually, to the airport. We had created a range of champagne truffles. It was under another brand. And he'd made a mistake on the artwork of calling them champagne truffles rather than marked as champagne truffles. And the region of Champagne don't like that. They get rather cross. So I guess we were having a a progressive conversation in the car about the importance of mitigating this. And on my way home, I was building this idea of a range of dusted truffles, which was the genesis moment. And it was originally called honeycomb, yes, which didn't make any sense at all. And I didn't feel like it had any personality or passion to it. So I thought, what's missing is a character. I need a mascot. I need some sort of alter ego that can go and do things that perhaps I can't, and actually add that layer of majesty and fantasy to what is ultimately a very, very practical process, the manufacturing of chocolate. And so it popped into my head the idea of Monty Bojangles. We had this cat, a beautiful little creature. He was a tuxedo cat, black and white. The name was derived from his personality, because he would be very proper. He would be almost bashful when being observed. And yet there were moments, particularly when he wasn't being watched, you can tell I'm a cat person, by the way, forgive me, where he was full of life and joy and jazz. And so this double barrel name was contrived, Monty Bojangles. He was my he was my friend for a long, long while. Lost him actually in the pandemic. He was very old at that point, and that was his time, it sounds awfully goofy, but I do miss him, actually. I used to have this old CRT, big old screen, right? Not like a modern flat screen. Generated a huge amount of heat, and Monty used to lie across the top. And that's the image that I have in my mind. It sounds foolish, right? But it kind of is, yeah? It was not planned. It wasn't contrived or an expression in manipulation or good branding or marketing. I just figured it'd be cool, if I'm honest. So it became Monty Bojangles, and from that point on, this entire identity and world was created as I literally used him as this fantastical vehicle, this anthropomorphized identity that could go to this fantastical landscape. Ultimately, it's a gesture of escape and fantasy. And literally from that point on, the world just expanded, and Monty lives on.
Brilliant.
That's the truth.
Lovely story. Thank you for sharing that. I think we have got time for, but the chat is very quiet in case people wonder why we're not taking questions from home. So I think there is time for one more question in the room today. I thought there was a gentleman round here somewhere that wanted to ask a question.
Mine wasn't a question,
Oh.
it was just a point I'd like to make.
Would you like to have the microphone, sir, and then people can hear?
Yes, I'd like to say that I agree with all the presenters that the actual confidence that the completing whatever their disciplines, their qualifications in their disciplines, that the OU gave them in order to improve their lives and the people that they also care for. But the important thing is, if you a carer, and I think one of your presenters said that once that person's not there, you're left. You've not been in the workplace for many years. And by doing an OU degree during that time, it gives you the confidence to go ahead and get a job and carry on with a career that you might not have had if you hadn't have done that.
Oh, thank you.
I myself did obviously a degree confident, and it gave me the confidence to do things that I would never have thought that I could have achieved if I hadn't have done that.
There are so many nodding heads around you and behind you.
Yeah, I think everybody in the room that's done it has actually experienced the same thing. It just gives you confidence. That is the key word to it all.
Lovely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Oh, a little ripple of applause in the room. And I'm sure lots of people nodding at home as well, agreeing with you there. And actually, that seems like a really nice point to leave our session today. We have run just a few minutes over time. But thank you so much for sharing your own story. Thank you to all of our speakers for taking the time to be with us this afternoon. Just to let you know that if you're not receiving emails from us and you would like to, I would ask you to email the team, and if you're online there will be an address will come up in the chat box. If you email alumni@open.ac.uk with the subject heading of Keep in Touch, one of our team will respond and we can make sure that you receive invites, the latest news, invitations to events like today. So if you're not getting that email and you'd like to, do please get in touch. The other thing to share with you, which I know that many of you will have come to expect, is there will be a feedback form coming to you over the days ahead, and we would be exceptionally grateful if you would fill that in and let us know what you're thinking and what you'd like to see next time. So thank you again to our speakers. Thank you again for joining us in the room, and thank you again for joining us at home today. I hope you have a great day.